The afternoon sun slanted through the windows of Pine Creek's one-room schoolhouse as Miss Eleanor Hayes dismissed her students for the day. She smiled, watching them scatter like quail, their laughter fading as they raced toward home. Only when the last child disappeared around the bend did her smile falter. She pulled the anonymous letter from her pocket and read it again, her hands trembling. Vicious accusations in carefully disguised handwriting, the third such letter this week. Looking up, she saw 5 men approaching her schoolhouse, the town council, led by Sheriff Morgan. Their grim expressions told her everything. Someone wanted her gone, and it seemed they were about to succeed. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Your comment helps our community grow stronger. Thanks, and let's get back to the story. Eleanor smoothed her skirt and stood tall behind her desk as the men filed in, removing their hats. Only Sheriff Walter Morgan met her eyes, his weathered face unreadable beneath his silver mustache. Theodore Hamlin, the town banker and council head, cleared his throat. Eleanor, we've received some disturbing reports about your conduct. I can explain, Eleanor began, but Hamlin raised his hand. These letters detail your meetings with men after dark, Hamlin continued, placing several papers on her desk. Conduct unbecoming of someone entrusted with our children's education. Those are lies, Eleanor said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I've never. Reverend Michael stepped forward, his expression pained. Miss Hayes, we've always valued your teaching, but 3 separate accounts cannot be dismissed. Your reputation. My reputation is being deliberately destroyed, Eleanor interrupted, by someone who wants me gone. She looked directly at Sheriff Morgan. Has anyone actually seen me engaging in this alleged behavior? The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. No witnesses have come forward, just these letters. But in a town like ours, gossip spreads faster than truth, she finished for him. Yes, I'm well aware. Hamlin's face hardened. The council has voted. We'll need your resignation by week's end. After they left, Eleanor sank into her chair, tears threatening. 3 years she'd given this town, far from her Boston home, earning respect through dedicated work. Now it would end because of anonymous lies. She was still sitting there when the schoolhouse door creaked open. Jackson Morgan slouched in, the sheriff's son and the town's notorious troublemaker. At 22, he should have been working or married, not lingering on the edges of respectability. Heard the council paid you a visit, he drawled, leaning against the doorframe. Eleanor quickly wiped her eyes. Jackson, I'm in no mood for. They're forcing you out over those ridiculous letters, aren't they? His blue eyes, so like his father's, held unexpected understanding. How did you know about the letters? This town runs on gossip, Miss Hayes. He stepped inside, closing the door. And I know you're innocent. Eleanor stared at him. You do? I ride the town perimeter most nights. Can't sleep. He shrugged. Been doing it for months. Never once saw you meeting anyone. Hope flickered within her. Would you tell your father that? Jackson laughed without humor. My word against those letters? Father'd sooner believe a rattlesnake. Known town drunk son against respectable citizens' testimonies? Eleanor sighed. You're right. She began gathering her books. It doesn't matter anyway. Once a teacher's reputation is questioned, there's no recovering. So you're just leaving? Letting them win? His voice carried unexpected disappointment. What choice do I have? Jackson kicked at the floorboards. That's what I figured you'd say. All you proper folks so worried about appearances. That's unfair, Eleanor snapped. I fought for this position. I've given everything to these children. But I can't teach if parents won't trust me. Jackson studied her. You really care about this place, don't you? He moved closer. What if we could prove those letters are lies? How? Eleanor asked, reluctant hope in her voice. I have my suspicions about who's behind this. He hesitated. Banker Hamlin's niece arrived last month. She taught back east. Been making it known she'd love to settle here. Eleanor's eyes widened. You think Theodore Hamlin fabricated the letters to create a position for his niece? Wouldn't put it past him. Man's about as honest as a coyote in a henhouse. Even if you're right, we'd need proof. Jackson grinned, a flash of mischief that likely contributed to his reputation. Then let's get some, Miss Hayes. Unless you've got a train to catch? Eleanor hesitated only briefly. You have until tomorrow night. I've already booked passage on Friday's stage. That evening, Eleanor paced her small rented room above the milliner's shop. Agreeing to Jackson's plan was reckless. Breaking into Hamlin's office could land them both in serious trouble. Yet the alternative, leaving in disgrace, her teaching career likely ruined, seemed worse. A soft tap at her window made her jump. Jackson balanced precariously on the awning below, grinning like a schoolboy. Eleanor raised the sash. "Have you lost your mind?" "Possibly," he whispered. "But I found something interesting. Hamlin's niece was seen having dinner with the Reverend and his wife tonight. They're discussing her taking over the school. So quickly." Eleanor felt sick. "They're not even waiting for me to leave town." "It gets better," Jackson continued. Overheard Hamlin telling Michaels they needed to handle the situation before Friday. Something about making sure you can't find another teaching position in the territory. Eleanor gripped the windowsill. "They want to destroy my reputation beyond Pine Creek?" Jackson nodded grimly. "We need to move tonight. Bank's empty, Hamlin's at dinner." "Perfect timing." "It's too dangerous," Eleanor protested. "More dangerous than having no future?" His eyes held surprising intensity. "Sometimes you have to break the rules to find justice, Miss Hayes." 20 minutes later, they slipped through Pine Creek's quiet streets. Eleanor's heart pounded so loudly she was certain it would alert the whole town. Jackson moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to avoiding attention, staying in shadows, motioning when to move. The bank's rear door yielded to Jackson's lockpicks with surprising ease. "Innocent people rarely have your skills," Eleanor whispered. "Never claim to be innocent, Miss Hayes. Just honest when it counts." Hamlin's office was immaculate, every paper perfectly aligned. While Jackson checked the desk drawers, Eleanor examined the filing cabinet. "Look for correspondence with his niece," Jackson suggested. "Or drafts of those letters sent about you." Eleanor's fingers trembled as she sorted through folders. Nothing seemed relevant until she opened one labeled School Affairs. Inside was a letter from Hamlin's niece, Catherine, dated 2 months earlier. "Uncle Theodore, I appreciate your offer to secure the teaching position. I understand discretion is needed, as the current teacher has her supporters. I trust your method of creating a vacancy will be effective and untraceable." Eleanor gasped. "Jackson, I found it." She held out the letter when the office door suddenly swung open, light from a lantern blinding them momentarily. Sheriff Morgan stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "What in God's name are you two doing?" "Father," Jackson began, but the sheriff cut him off. "Breaking and entering, possible theft. Have you completely lost your mind? And dragging Miss Hayes into your criminal activities?" "Sheriff Morgan, please." Eleanor stepped forward. "This was my idea." Both Morgan men stared at her in disbelief. "I needed evidence," she continued, holding out Catherine's letter. "Your son only helped because I asked him." The sheriff took the letter, skepticism plain on his face as he read. His expression gradually shifted from anger to confusion to something darker. "I suspected something wasn't right about those accusations," he said finally. "But this..." He looked at his son. "Why didn't you come to me with your suspicions? Would you have believed me?" Jackson challenged. "Or would you have assumed I was causing trouble again?" Pain flashed across the sheriff's face. "You're my son. I would have listened. Like you listened when I told you Hamlin was charging Widow Jenkins double interest? Or when his men roughed up Miller for being late on a payment?" Eleanor watched the tension between father and son. Years of misunderstanding crystallized in their standoff. Sheriff Morgan's shoulders sagged slightly. "I've made mistakes, Jackson. But this," he held up the letter, "this changes things." He turned to Eleanor. "Miss Hayes, I owe you an apology. It appears you've been the victim of a calculated deception." "What happens now?" she asked. "Justice," the sheriff said firmly. The next morning, Pine Creek buzzed with the news. Sheriff Morgan had called an emergency town meeting at the schoolhouse. By noon, the room overflowed with curious townspeople. Eleanor sat rigidly in her chair, aware of the whispers and stares. Theodore Hamlin arrived with the other council members, his usual confidence faltering slightly upon seeing the sheriff's stern expression. "What's the meaning of this, Morgan? We have businesses to run." "This won't take long, Hamlin," the sheriff replied. "I've called this meeting to address a grave injustice against Miss Hayes." "We've already settled that matter," Hamlin said dismissively. "Have we?" The sheriff held up Catherine's letter. "Would you care to explain this?" Color drained from Hamlin's face. "Where did you get that?" "That's private correspondence." "You had no right." "No right?" Jackson stood from his position against the wall. "Like you had no right to fabricate lies about Miss Hayes?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd as the sheriff explained the evidence. Hamlin's indignation quickly shifted to blustering denial. "You can't prove I wrote those anonymous letters," he insisted. Perhaps not directly, the sheriff acknowledged. But this morning, I compared the paper from those letters to the stationery in your office. Perfect match, right down to the watermark. The Reverend stepped forward, visibly distressed. Theodore, tell me you didn't. It's a misunderstanding, Hamlin interrupted. My niece is qualified. The town would benefit from her experience. So you destroyed an innocent woman's reputation? Mrs. Miller stood, the mother of Eleanor's best student. How dare you? Others began to voice support for Eleanor, but Hamlin wasn't finished. Are you all forgetting who found this so-called evidence? He demanded, pointing at Jackson. The town drunk's son, breaking into my office with this woman at night. If anything, this proves the accusations against her. The schoolhouse erupted in argument. Eleanor felt her vindication slipping away until Sheriff Morgan's voice cut through the chaos. Enough! I verified the evidence myself. He faced the crowd. For 3 years, Miss Hayes has educated our children with dedication and skill. She deserves better than whispers and accusations. As for my son, he glanced at Jackson. He may have chosen questionable methods, but his intentions were honorable. Something I haven't always recognized. Hamlin scoffed. Honorable? The boy's a troublemaker who's never done an honest day's work. That's where you're wrong, Hamlin. Jackson's voice was calm as he addressed the crowd. For the past year, I've been gathering evidence of certain banking practices in this town. Widow Jenkins isn't the only one being charged excessive interest. I've documented 17 cases of predatory lending. The sheriff looked startled. You never told me. Would you have believed me without proof? Jackson asked simply. The Reverend cleared his throat. I believe we've heard enough. He turned to Eleanor. Miss Hayes, on behalf of the council and this community, I offer our sincere apologies. Your position at our school remains secure, if you'll still have us. All eyes turned to Eleanor. She stood slowly, gathering her courage. I came to Pine Creek because I believe education is the foundation of community. I've poured my heart into teaching your children. She looked around the room, meeting the gazes of parents whose children had flourished under her care. I'd like to continue that work, but only in a town where truth matters more than rumor, and where justice isn't determined by position or wealth. Her gaze fell on Jackson, who watched her with newfound respect. There are good people here working to make this a better place. People whose value might not be immediately apparent. She turned to Sheriff Morgan. And there are people trying to uphold the law while making impossible choices. For their sake, and for the children who deserve stability, I'll stay. The meeting dissolved into relieved conversation. Eleanor found herself surrounded by supportive parents. Across the room, she saw Jackson and his father in what appeared to be their first honest conversation in years. Later, as the schoolhouse emptied, Jackson lingered. You're really staying? He asked. Eleanor nodded. This community is worth fighting for. She studied him. What about you? Still planning midnight rides around town? Jackson smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his face. Father's offered me a deputy position. Thinks my alternative skills might be useful in law enforcement. Deputy Jackson Morgan, Eleanor mused. It suits you. He shifted awkwardly. Miss Hayes, Eleanor, she corrected. I think we're past formalities. Eleanor, then. He met her eyes. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. She felt something unexpected flutter in her chest. Thank you for being the one person who stood up for the truth, regardless of the cost. As Jackson left, Eleanor turned to her classroom, already planning tomorrow's lessons. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the space with new promise. Sometimes, she realized, you had to weather the storm to find unexpected allies and discover where you truly belong. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and share with friends who love Western tales of justice and redemption. Your support keeps these stories coming. Let us know in the comments which character you connected with most, Eleanor, Jackson, or the sheriff. Until next time, this is Frontier Tales, bringing history to life one story at a time.